Welcome everyone to episode 24 of the Bunker Talk. I'm super excited to have Lourdes Ferrer with me from Ferrer Law Group. It had been a while that we hadn't seen each other. We're both a part of a networking group called Miss Esquire. So I'm super grateful for Miss Esquire to introducing me to so many wonderful people, but mainly women, which is great. She's with, I don't know if I already said it, Ferrer Law Group, Condo and HOA Law, which is a big deal here in South Florida.
A very big deal since the majority of the communities are association run.
Yeah, dealing with that. Tell everybody about yourself. Thank you so much for being here with me. I'm super excited to spend this time with you. Tell everybody, how'd you get into this space? Why law? Why that area? All that good stuff.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and it's great to see you. I think the last time I saw you was at a restaurant a few months ago.
And yes, by accident, too.
By accident, and you lit up a room. You light up a room.
Well,
so we walked in and we saw you. We were so excited.
Yeah,
and I can't believe it's been at least 8-9 months.
Easily.
Since. Yeah.
Easily.
So it's great to be here. So I primarily did insurance defense for a long period of time at a law firm, at a large insurance defense law firm, and primarily doing workers' compensation defense.
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, and it was great and I loved it, but there was a time period in 2010 where the law was changing and the future was uncertain, and so I had to reinvent myself, so to speak. So I had a great opportunity to switch career paths and went to Becker, or what's known as Becker and Polikoff, which is a very well-known and great people, great mentors, Becker and Polikoff. And I was there for, I think, about 2 years. And they primarily represent associations, not individual owners. And I just saw a need for a law firm that represented unit owners and condo owners against fantastic attorneys like Becker. And that's, one thing led to another. I never really planned on having my own firm, but it ended up happening that at the time I was running a law firm for Beckers. They had an extra office that they were expanding the Tri-County area. And I found myself basically running an office for them. And it was a lot. So I said, you know what, there's a need. I've learned so much, and the right time, the right place. And I started my firm in April of 2012. So it's been 12 years.
It's been 12. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That is hard work.
Yes, it was not easy, but it's very rewarding.
Because I've gotten familiar, with being surrounded by so many amazing, again, Miss Esquires for everyone, right? But it's mainly women. I've realized that a lot of the members have left big law and have gone out on their own. Why do you think that is? Or maybe why did you?
No, for me, like I said, it was really a series of events where I just saw an opportunity and it wasn't planned. And I think a lot of people plan it. And so I think I'm unusual from the standpoint that it was a light bulb moment. And I said, why not? Let's try it. And like I said, I had, a lot of mentors. Some are still here. Some are no longer with us. But they were invaluable, and I had the business background, and I had just learned so much throughout my 10 years with 2 great law firms. And but I think that for the most part, it's planned. And like you said, there's so many entrepreneurs and lawyers in Miss Esquire that have become such dear friends, and they have left big law. And I just think that we're in a time where people want more customized and personal attention. I think that the technology or the technological advances allows for the phones and the computer. And, there's a lot of people that use virtual paralegals, and there's a lot of people that use, there's a lot of opportunity in businesses out there that provide the resources to be able to do and go on your own without necessarily having to start with 10 or 15 people. Right. You could start small and work your way and grow with it. And I think it's sustainable. If you love it, if you're passionate enough for your clients and for your business and for yourself, I think it's a great opportunity and an opportunity really for yourself, but also to make an enormous change in the lives of other people.
I think this is super inspiring to hear too, because a lot of people Not that I've had here on the podcast, but just people that you talk to a lot. Most of them go into business because maybe they were mistreated as employees, or, you know, they have something to prove, which is fine. Any reason that you go into business is fine. And, you know, if it's your why, that's great. But I like to hear the perspective of, you saw an opportunity, you saw a void, and why not capitalize on that?
You know, there's so many law firms. There's great law firms out there that do association work. And I represent associations too. So it's not as if I don't represent associations, but the majority of my practice, obviously with proper conflict checks,
Sure.
we want to avoid those conflict of interests. But the majority of my clients are unit owners or property owners that are having problems with their association, whether it be a condominium or an HOA. And so many of these law firms that are so well-versed in association law just don't represent individual owners. And there's a lot of people out there that can't afford larger law firms or don't have different type of fee arrangements that they can enter into.
Right.
So the association, really, if you think about it, wants to fight an individual owner over something, and sometimes it's right and proper. A lot of times, unfortunately, it's not. And they have the backing and the money of the entire membership.
Right.
And then you have the one condo owner or property owner, whether it be elderly or handicapped or just doesn't have that much knowledge on the law, doesn't have the resources, and needs help to go up against the big associations and all of their financial backing. So there's a need for that, and to me it's rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes people, you know, when you're in an association, you just assume that everything they do is right. Like you a lot of people just don't question it because it's just like, well, I mean, I don't have the time, I don't have the resources, I don't have the knowledge to question it or to fight it. So it is a very important, you know, area of law where the average consumer really needs the help.
They really do. And if you think about it, so many different issues in association law really governs your personal life.
Right.
You know, you have a long day at work, you come home, you pick up the mail, you open the mailbox, and there's a letter from your HOA or the property management company. And I assure you, it's usually not good.
Not great.
Right. And, you know, at the end of
always something.
Yes. And at the end of the day, there's a purpose to it, right? You buy into an association with an understanding that there's a set of rules and regulations and rights and responsibilities that you have to follow. You give up some rights for that. But associations are like a small government, and there should be checks and balances, and there really isn't. And so a lot of times there's a lot of procedures and protections that are not followed by the association. And there's a lot of associations out there, for those that are familiar with association law, knows that there's been a huge regulations and new laws that just went into effect July 1st, a few weeks ago, because there's a huge need to revamp the laws and make sure that associations are not taking advantage of people. But at the end of the day, you come home, you get that letter, and then you have a problem. And after a long day, now you say to yourself, okay, well, I'm being fined. I'm being fined $1,000. You know, that's insane. Well, the law doesn't work like that. You know, you're entitled to due process. And a lot of associations don't give that opportunity. So it's a very personal issue. I feel a lot of times like I'm a therapist for the clients, not just a lawyer, because they cry and it becomes their issue. Or a lot of times they're getting they're foreclosed on for a violation. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, from parking their cars or their cars getting towed. I had somebody last week whose wife was pregnant. She was about to go into labor any day now, and he got a letter from the association that they were going to tow his truck, his only form of transportation. And he said, what do I do? And so these are very significant issues that affect people day to day. Right. So again, it goes back to the opportunity, but it's also nice to earn a living and do something while helping people at the same time.
I could imagine it's very rewarding.
Exhausting, but rewarding.
Well, you can't have one without the other.
That's
right?
true. That's true.
So what, give us a couple scenarios that was a great example of one. Like let's talk about condos right now. Cause you know, we don't do a lot of condo association. We do them, but we don't play in the big spaces, right? Okay. We do like the smaller ones, and a lot of them are struggling. They don't have the reserves. They don't have, the people on the board are just people that volunteered. They have no knowledge. It's bad. Yeah. We're dealing with an association right now they were just like, well, we're not going to do the recertification. the 50-year recertification. And we're just like, well, I mean, you don't have a choice.
Right. This is not an
It's
optional.
also people's lives.
Right.
How are you going to play with that, especially with what's recently happened in the years down here recently with
the Surfside.
The Surfside towers? Like, it's wild to me. But in what scenarios would someone if someone is dealing with a board or just, the property management company or the association that they're not listening, they feel like they're doing things wrong. Like what would be some triggers where they would reach out to someone like you?
I think at the end of the day, what it really comes down to in this area of the law and so many aspects of our life is accountability, right? I think that we need to be able to hold people accountable when they do wrong things or when they fail to follow the law, and there's consequences for individual property owners. I had someone that I agreed to take on the case recently who was employed at a Fortune 500 company for 16 years, very educated man. And, just 4 years ago, he had gotten engaged in another country, beautiful pictures. And his wife had an accident shortly after getting married, and she died. Mm. And his life, understandably so, turned upside down. And during that time period, the association had to start doing the reserves issues, and they passed special assessments, and they passed them improperly, and they gave no notice. And all of a sudden, his maintenance of 2 units went from $300 a month to $1,000 a month, and he was seeking psychiatric help. So he couldn't, maintain his job, and it snowballed. And he tried to do the responsible thing. He tried to turn around and sell it, and had multiple offers on his units on the beach. And because the association had not done their certification, they were blacklisted by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And even cash offers
couldn't be done.
At least 4 times he had viable offers. And now he finds himself being foreclosed upon by the association that has unclean hands and are the very same people that impeded his ability to sell for not following the law, for not having the proper reserves, for not doing their recertification. So these are the type of people that have very valid.
Right. It's not negligence.
It's not it's not brought upon themselves.
Right. It's not, you don't pick up your trash can from the driveway.
Correct.
Which I'm a little guilty of, but.
Well, they changed the law on that too. So you have a little bit more leeway now. You have a little bit more time. It can't be anymore. You have to bring in your trash by 6 o'clock the same day. You can't do it anymore. The legislature was kind enough to actually change that.
But that is serious. I'm not making light of his situation. That's actually the perfect, again, it's very unfortunate, but it's the scenario of like where people need help. What else can they do? The average consumer, doesn't matter how educated.
Right. Life
happens. Circumstances change, especially in today's world where people, successful people are not, they're not, it's not like things don't happen to them, right?
This isn't a matter of being lazy or negligent or
he tried to do
right.
And
it's
so
life happens.
Life
to
happens to everybody. And the thing is that also they're messing up. Like that is why you are needed. That is exactly what a great answer to the question, because I think that sometimes people just, even for me, like I'm part of an association and they're god awful. And it's one of those things where it's just like, you're not going to fight the beast sometimes, but that's the perfect example of like,
I enjoy fighting the beast
I love
for
that.
a good cause.
I love that.
I can be beastie too. So,
I love that.
The beast against the beast.
That's amazing. I love that so much. That's going to be huge.
But even your trash can example that, some people might think that it's not as significant, can be very significant because there's rogue board members.
Right.
That, for those that watched Seinfeld back in the day, there's the condo commandos and, those stories are very real. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people and presidents that believe that they have unequivocal and unchecked authority to do whatever they want.
Actual power.
Yeah. And they don't even listen to their other board members.
Right.
They just do whatever they want. And they hand violations. I actually have one on video on an existing case where he said, another violation for you. Because somebody spoke up at a meeting. And you're entitled to speak at a meeting. It's in the statute. And he just started giving fines out. So imagine the elderly. These are things that you think it's out of a sitcom, and they're very real.
Right.
So imagine the old lady who, doesn't bring in her trash can, before they change the law by 6:00 because she relies on her elderly adult children that live with her, or she lives with them, and they come home at 8:00 at night. And she doesn't have the ability in her 80s to be able to bring in this huge trash can. So she starts getting fined $100 a day because she's not bringing in the trash can by 6:00, waiting for her son or daughter to come home to do it. And, in certain circumstances, that association can eventually file a lien foreclosure and foreclose on that violation if they don't have the money to pay $1,000 fine. So, it's a very real problem, from trash cans to flower beds to, just rules and regulations or bullying or harassment. And so many of my clients are attorneys too, which to me is fascinating because of the Miss Esquire. I get a lot of other attorneys that know I do this work, and the majority of us live in an association.
Right. South Florida is full of them.
Yeah,
it is what it is. It's super fascinating. Thank you for sharing that, because I think that it also humanizes that condo HOA world. The space is always so tense. I went to lunch with an insurance agent friend of mine last week, who he's like, I'm not on the board. And they always ask me, and he's like, no, and I'm not doing the insurance. I'm not getting involved. He's like, but I did go to the meeting just to see just to be a visitor to, know what's happening. And he was like, these grown adults are screaming at each other.
Yes.
Screaming. He's like that. I got up and I yelled at everybody, and I was like, you guys are all disgusting. Like, how does anything get done here? And imagine the people that just don't know. So thank you for doing the special work, because you're doing real work. And I think that it's especially true with like the elderly. We have such a high elderly population down here that live in these condos that really have, and if they don't have any children, if they don't have, any support, really, it is something super powerful that you do.
Thank you. Yeah. It's heart-wrenching.
I'm sure.
It's great as a business too, because there's so many wrongs that I get to right. And obviously in the process, you're able to make, earn a nice living out of it. But it is heart-wrenching. And, you a lot of the days, at the end of the day, you're drained from the things that you hear.
Well, it's a very emotionally charged. I would assume family law is similar. Very emotional.
I could very easily see that. It's very real. It's people's lives. It's not to take away from personal injury accidents or things like that, because even like a work injury, it's so personal. So a lot of these things are very personal, but these are things that it really becomes very personal between the association and the individual owner. It's all out.
And I think that, you might be the only person I know that does this. So there's not a lot of resource. I feel, even as a homeowner in an association, I don't feel like there's a lot of resources for us. So
there's a limited.
That's an advantage for you.
It is. From a business perspective, it's an enormous advantage. It's also very difficult when I have to reject work, because I can only take on so many clients at a time, and I'm very involved in it. So I won't sign up a client and take on a case and pass it on to another attorney. I do have my law partner, and we work on the cases together, but I'm very involved with it. And so I don't do volume litigation. Every case is very specific and should be handled. I don't do cookie cutter, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's scalable law practices, but I don't think this is one of them, because each situation, the facts are very different. So you need to handle them, in my opinion, in such a way that pertains to each individual's personalities or issues or whatever is specific to them. So it's very hard when I get phone calls and I have to turn it down, and then I will refer it to, I don't ever like to say no and just end it there. I like to send them to somebody, and there's just not a lot out there. I just referred out one this morning, and I think it's a great case, but I only take on a certain number of cases at a time, and this person needs attention and can't wait 2 or 3 weeks to see me. So there's maybe 3, 4. Yeah. There's wonderful attorneys that I know, but like I said, they represent associations. So to represent the individual owners, there's not that many out there, and it's unfortunate. I wish there were more.
Let's talk about 2 things that you mentioned. So 12 years in business. Yes. Let's talk about that. What has this journey of entrepreneurship taught you? What have you learned about yourself?
that I'm very resilient. I bounce back. I get knocked down, and you got to pick yourself back up, shake it off, and keep going. I haven't been knocked out where I have broken a leg and I have to use a crutch and, do it like that. But, it takes a lot of resilience to bounce back and to get back up. And, there's a lot of books on how to run businesses. And of course, I enjoy all of them. And like I said, I've had my mentors in my life. But, there's one in particular that's no longer with us that, he loves that line, onward and upward. And I think about that a lot. So, life is hard for everybody. For some, it's harder than others. There's also moments. It's all cyclical. So, but what I've learned is that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Yeah. And if I take a difficult time as a learning experience, I think that I come out so much stronger than if I hadn't had that difficult experience. So it's been a journey. It's a journey like life, but one I'm very proud of it because it wasn't easy. If it was easy, then it wouldn't feel as rewarding and I wouldn't feel so proud.
Right. If you don't have the dark, then you don't appreciate the light.
You need the bad for the good. You need the down for the up. Life is a series of ups and downs.
What would you tell someone that is thinking about starting a law firm? If you could go back and do it again, would you change anything?
That is such a difficult question because we all learn from experiences and we say, well, I should have done that differently. And sure, there's examples here and there where I'm, whether it be I should have hired this employee over the other employee, or, I should have had the foresight to do, to turn left instead of to turn right. But I feel like if I did things very methodically, I started in an executive suite. I started just with a 6 months executive suite. It took me a few cycles of that before I signed a lease. And then at that point, I was horrified. And I signed, a 3-year lease, whereas during the pandemic, I signed a 5-year lease, and I probably needed to go to therapy for that. And here I am 10 years later in the same spot here in Weston or close by to where we're at, where the studio's at. But at the same time, I value all of the bad experiences because those bad experiences taught me so much. So what I would say to somebody starting out is you don't accomplish what you dream of accomplishing if you don't take a risk and try to go for it. And you don't have to start big. You could start small and work your way towards something. And I just think that there's so much opportunity these days for people to be able to go on their own. Like I said, with the technology that's available, you could get answering systems, you can get virtual paralegals or legal assistants. If you have too much work, you can hire out contract attorneys to help you. Networking is so important, meeting people like you. I've made so many close friends because of Miss Esquire. Shout out to them.
Absolutely.
Because we're a unique group, and it might work for some people. It's worked for me, but the friendships that I've made, to me, is precious. And to see, like you said, so many people that have left the big firms, and I don't want to take away from the big firms. No. And, listen, it worked, I still stay in touch, with people at my first insurance defense firm. They're great, but going on your own, I have to say I love it. I can't imagine going back.
I was going to say, I read a book by Patrick Bet-David, Your Next 5 Moves or 4 Moves. I think it's 5. And he has a whole chapter about entrepreneurship and intrapreneur, right? And it's okay that you don't want to run a business. It's okay. There's people that would never do it. They don't have, maybe they're not the risk taker. Maybe they just don't want it. And that's okay. But they still make really, really great employees. And they operate within your business or within the big law, let's say, right? As if it was their business, right? Without all the risk.
Right.
But they show up, they work hard, and they take ownership of their role. And it was kind of refreshing to read that too, because it's like, I think maybe on the flip side, maybe there's people in that big law space or in my space, right, that work for insurance agents and they never go out on their own. it doesn't make us more successful, right? That we
I agree.
did this. Like, it's okay. I think there's a lot of pressure too on that side of like, well, go out. You could just be a really stellar employee that takes ownership of your role and like contributes. I know in law, a lot of, I don't know how it works, but like the partnership status, and there's things that you can do even without going out on your own. But I will say the risk factor that going out on your own, the impact it has on your life, professionally and personally, is huge.
It is. And, you get used to, a nice salary and nice benefits and insurance. And, you from one day to the next, you
I would say,
you don't have that anymore.
I'm going to tell you. So for me, I worked for my family, right? Out of high school, I went to college, but briefly. And my parents had corporate jobs. At 47, my dad said, I'm done with corporate America, took money out of his 401k, opened an insurance office. Never sold we opened an Allstate. Never sold a piece of insurance, never owned a business.
Wow.
He had just had enough. And my mom worked for Equifax literally all her life. He was 49, she was 47. So Equifax for 30 years. So
wow.
They had the corporate, my dad had a company car, great salary, didn't have to travel so much. Like they had a great scenario, and he was done. And I worked with them at that first agency. Then we worked at a second one. We sold that one. But it's almost like I still wasn't feeling, the pressures of the risk.
Right.
I opened this November of 2019 from zero.
Wow.
And then COVID happened. And I had signed a lease in January. And I had hired 3 people. And then I had to fire everybody, break the lease. I dismantled everything 2 months later that I had done. And I have changed as a person so much during these 3 years. I would say COVID probably accelerated this change, obviously, because owning a business during that, it of course, and having nothing. So what you were saying about the risk factor of doing this for yourself, it is something to be proud of.
Yeah.
It is something to be proud of, because there's no security.
No, there's no security.
There's nothing.
Blanket.
It's us.
It really is.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It is tough. And so having, and especially with your case, like being so motivated by the gap for the consumer to make yourself uncomfortable, to do this for the consumer is huge.
Thank you. This is like an epiphany for me. This is like a therapy session.
Yeah, I mean, good. I'm glad. I
hadn't looked at it that way though.
Really, you gave up your safety net because you saw something where you could help people. And in a space where there's not a lot of help, it's not overly saturated.
No.
So what you do is important. So I just want you to know,
thank you.
Not just in entrepreneurship and as an example, 12 years, through COVID, this is what you're doing is tough. It's tough business.
Thank you.
So,
but it takes a village, and
Oh, absolutely.
As I can't without my law partner. He came in about 10 years ago, and helped enormously because he's able to do things. If I'm in court all day long, he's able to do things at the office to help run the business. I have my law clerk who is fantastic, and she has a huge heart. In fact, I have to try to tell her sometimes, we can't save the world.
Right.
You got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on somebody else. But your team is important too. So it's not really just me, but I did have the vision for it, and life circumstances put me in a situation to do it. But I would say though that it's probably better to those that want to do it, that you plan for it. If I could go back in time, actually, I would probably plan for it, save for it a little bit more. But because this wasn't planned and it was just a product of circumstance, I would say that's probably good advice to give somebody else, because then the fall or the potential fall wouldn't be as significant.
Talk to me about partnership, having a partnership. What do you think is key to the success in that, besides finding the right one, right? How do you find the right one?
I don't know how you find them. In my case, it was I think it was meant to be, you know, as cliche as that sounds. You know, I wasn't actively looking for it. I wasn't actively looking for him. I had been called to do a radio show on an AM station, and I saw an attorney from another big law firm that was a partner at another big law firm who had gone on his own doing consumer protection work. And we connected, and we saw each other, and we started talking, and I happened to have a big case at the time that I needed help with. So I called a meeting in my office on a weekend, and this attorney shows up and brings another colleague, which was another attorney from another prior big insurance defense firm that was on his own. And, you know, a year later we were partners. And I think that it's 10 years. It's 10 years this month, actually. And I think that the most important thing is to respect each other, understand that you're different. And I think that the differences are good because you don't want the same exact person as you. Right. You know, we balance each other out. And patience, you know, and if you have the end goal and you're not thinking really about yourself, but about the greater good, it's always about the firm. It's not about me. It's not about him. It's really about the firm and the clients. I think that those are all ingredients to have a successful outcome.
Yeah. I know that there's, even in my space, I actually was having a conversation this week with an agency that she had merged and it did not go well. And now she has to buy them out and dealing with all that stuff. I know it's people are on the fence on partnerships, no partnerships. And so that's great. I agree on the respect part and on the differences part, especially because if you guys if you don't have the same weaknesses or strengths, that's where the magic happens, right? If you're super strong in something and he's lacking in that and vice versa, that really makes a good scenario.
I think that the partnership, in my experience, I know a lot of people that have it's gone really bad. Mm-hmm. And then I also know people that have had very successful ones. And the ones that have been around for a long time, it wasn't all, roses. It wasn't all, a beautiful, loving experience. So I think that like in a relationship, I think that you need to be able to, we've had our moments where we have maybe not an all-out war, but we will have disagreements about things or strategy on a case or, whether, he was rude to an attorney on the other side and I want to handle something softer or vice versa. I want to be more aggressive and he wants to be softer because every circumstance calls for a specific approach. But at the end of the day, when you have that discussion or that disagreement, you literally, it has to end there. Right. You resolve it, you accept it, you resolve it and say, okay, how do we move forward from it? And then you do, and then it's done. There's no holding grudges. Right. And I think that that's a very important, not so much secret, but something we don't see a lot that is good for a marriage and a friendship.
Well, I mean, it's a second marriage.
It's a second marriage. It's like the work spouse.
Right. And it might be even a little more complicated than actual marriage because of money.
Sure. Of course.
The decisions there are impacting the finances of the business.
Yes.
So that is challenging. Question. So again, both part of Miss Esquire. Talk to us about your networking. What have you learned? What do you give some advice for maybe a new attorney or business owner, doesn't have to be an attorney, right? That may be struggling with networking. How have you built your relationships, your referral partners, things like that?
Again, a very cliche thing to say, but being yourself.
It sounds like such a basic question, but I've asked it about 24 times and the majority of people say that, and it sounds cliche, but it really is meant very sincerely and very deeply. I think it's the hardest thing for people to do. It is the hardest thing. You need to, sometimes you're tired and you don't want to go to an event. We're all in that circumstance. Maybe parents of children are too tired from a long day at work to go to a soccer game, but you go, and it has to be part of your routine. Not a daily routine of, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Right. I mean routine as just like you have to pay your electric bill, just like you have to file a response to a motion as a lawyer, you have to generate income. Mm-hmm. It has to be part of your day-to-day. So a lot of times you're tired, but you need to go. And when I say be yourself, don't put on, don't try to be somebody else. Be who you are.
sometimes you interject yourself in a conversation that you're not a part of, but you can't stand there in a corner either, because people are not going to know you unless you make it. You have to be proactive instead of reactive. Right. And to me, networking has been critical, because I don't really advertise. I don't think I've ever put an ad. I mean, maybe I'll sponsor things where an ad appears, but I've never done a commercial, or I've never paid an ad for a newspaper. It's really all word of mouth. And the networking, I think, is it. Put yourself out there and get to know people. And then the beautiful part about it is that then you get to know people on a different level after seeing them every so often, and then you really like them and you respect them. And to me, if I'm going to refer business or do business with somebody else, I don't want it just to be out of, I don't want to date myself and say the yellow pages, but it doesn't want to have to be eeny, meeny, miny, mo. People feel comfortable referring something to me because they know that I'm passionate and that I love what I do and that I care. And they only know that from seeing me at events and talking to me.
And who you are.
And who I am.
Because
Same
you
thing
show
with
up
you.
with yourself.
I think that you're amazing, and I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting here.
No, we've always
connected.
We've always, yeah. I would agree with everything that you said, and I think that social media has it's a double-edged sword, right? In real life and business and all of life, and I think that one of the things that it's done good for is the networking piece, right? Because now you can make those connections even deeper with the people that you already know, right?
True.
So, like, for example, I know you love the Panthers. We won the cup, right?
We got the cup.
And I see you guys at the game, and I like it, and we're like, yay! And maybe we wouldn't have known that we both like to go to hockey games from a structured networking event.
It's so true. It's
right?
That's some point.
And so it's like it's that, but I think that also it has taken away the ability for people to have conversations, for people to feel comfortable in those spaces, especially in a world post-COVID, right?
Yes.
Where we were at home, not talking to people, locked up. Now to go back out, I think that it's something that needs to be developed and skillfully. And I think that the best advice, and everyone's usually on the same page about that, it's be yourself. And I think that people are struggling with being themselves now more than ever. And maybe it is because of social media, right? The pressure of people always putting their best foot forward, right? And only highlighting the good. And so
you have to be vulnerable.
It's so funny because I was just talking with someone. I went to a breakfast on Tuesday with someone that I got introduced to, and she was so kind. And she was just like, oh my God, I don't know how you do it all. And you're everywhere, and you're this. And I feel like if the one thing I can tell people, and the one thing that I can do is be honest, like you and we greeted each other, we hugged for a good 10 seconds. And you said something similar. And I said it to you, and I was like, honestly, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right. Right.
Like, I think that people need to hear that, right?
I was
like,
being so vulnerable, but so sincere. And, I think a lot of us, to be honest, when I say I don't know what I'm doing, it's, I know what I'm doing work-wise.
In my job.
You know what you're doing in your work-wise, right? Because that's why we do it and we're successful at it. But I think there's so much division amongst people nowadays. And I think that if we all get back to the basics, where we realize that we're human and we don't know it all. Right. And that we need each other to make the world go round with our strengths and weaknesses. I think that I'm not here to, solve the world's problems or say that I want world peace. I'm a realist. But at the same time, I just think that there's a lot that can be learned from each other, and accepting that life is hard and that we don't know it all, and that there's things that we do well and there's things that we don't, and that many of us are struggling. My biggest, if you were to ask me, what is it that you want to work on? A New Year's resolution, let's say if we were in January, maybe manage my time better and that work less, maybe not put in 12, 14-hour days, maybe not work weekends. Sure, I could work on those things. But like I said, I don't know what I'm doing either. I don't know how I juggle it all. Right. I don't know how it's been 12 years. I just get up every morning.
And you do it.
And you do it.
Right.
And if you get punched and knocked down and you fall on the floor, like I said, you pick yourself up and you keep going, and tomorrow's a new day.
Right.
And another very cliche thing to say, but tomorrow is a new day, and you have to live in the present, and you can't have fear. You really need to just take one step in front of the other, and somehow it works.
Right. It figures itself out. I completely agree. And I think that, and thank you for highlighting that specifically, because it's true. Obviously, anybody being honest about how hard this business in general. It's not the profession that you're in. It's the profession of business that's difficult and challenging and wears on you. And you go to bed at night and then you wake up 3 hours later and then you can't sleep. And then, it doesn't matter the industry.
Right.
It's funny because I was somewhere, I think it was with the Daily Drip, and we were talking about this, and we were talking about, it doesn't discredit you as a professional when you can admit that business is hard.
I agree.
Right. And I think that women do a better job of that, of being,
we're
willing to be vulnerable.
We're willing to be vulnerable and share our feelings.
And it doesn't discredit, we don't view each other less of a professional for admitting it.
I think we admire each other more. I think it connects us.
I agree. And I think it makes you more of a professional because you could be honest. Nobody wins 100% of the time.
No.
Nobody.
No, it's just statistically impossible.
Right. So it's so refreshing. And honestly, when I started this, it was my industry is very supportive of people, of new agents, old agents. Everyone shares. They're very collaborative in the independent agent channel. So I'm very fortunate. So I thought to myself, well, I did it twofold. I'm not going to lie. I was networking so much that I was exhausted, and it wasn't helping my business.
Right.
Right. Because it was just too much, spread too thin. And like you said, it's better to go deep than wide. Right.
Absolutely.
Deep in relationships with people. B&I works for some people, it doesn't work for others. But in one thing that they got right is that theory of know, like, and trust. You do business with people that you know, you like, and you trust.
True.
So it's like, instead of casting a wider net, why not just go deeper with your relationships, right? And that's one of the things that I've implemented. I decided to do that late last year. And so I scaled back in some of the things I'm doing. And that's why I'm doing this, because it gives me one-on-one time. Like, you're going to walk out of here and we're going to go get cocktails in the next 30 days.
Right. Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
We haven't seen each other in like 9 months.
Yes.
Right. Because this is a deeper conversation. It's
a bonding moment.
It's a bonding moment, and it's going to help others. And, do I need to go to the next chamber event to do that? No. For me, I'm not knocking it.
No,
it works for some people.
Like B&I, I think is great for a lot of people. It's not for me.
It worked for me. Right. It worked for me for many years.
Many people swear by it.
Yeah. Oh, we would not have given up that position. We gave it up when we sold the agency, because on the personal line side, it works very well. But for me and what I want to do and my goals, it doesn't align. That's okay. But I think that's even valuable when networking, right? Don't go to something because it works for the people you're around. It may not work for you. That's okay. Find what works. Find people that can support you. Be yourself.
Because there's all kinds of networking. You hit the nail right on the head. When we tell people to network, find the shoe that fits. Right. There's so many beautiful shoes out there that I love, but they might not look great on me or feel great. Right. It's the same thing with networking. There's so many different opportunities, and it might not work for everybody. So you have to find your own fit. But then when you find that fit and you buy your select group of shoes, really wear them wear them proud.
Yep. I 100% agree. And I think that as a new business owner, I remember I was doing everything under the sun. There was an event, I was there, right? And it wears on you personally.
It does.
Any free event, I was there. No, you as a business owner, as an employee, personally, all we have is time. Time is our most valuable asset, and attention. Attention, right? If we're spending a lot of time on the wrong stuff, we're not going to get it.
I wish I could buy time, but I think that whoever wouldn't agree with that statement, whether it be in any sense, it doesn't have to be business sense or legal sense. It's just there's not enough hours in the day. And I think a lot of us can at least agree on that, that we would like more hours in the day. And that's the one thing you can't buy more of. There's 24 hours in a day, and you have to use them as wisely as possible.
And you just said it. You wake up every day and you realize 12 years have passed.
Right.
In business, right? It's almost like it's so fast. Time is so fast that if you're not intentionally focusing on your time and how you're spending it, you don't get it back. You wake up a couple of years later and you realize you've been wasting the time, or it's not in the right in the right place. I feel like one of the biggest. I actually read a book called 10X is Easier Than 2X. Life changing.
Yes.
The trilogy of it. That book, The Gap and the Gain, and Who Not How. Life changing. I finished it late last year. Hired 2 people. I mean, life changing. The series of those 3 books is life changing. And the 10X book actually helped me also shed some of the things I was doing, because it's like it's not like Grant Cardone 10X. It's like the 10X of just making the most of yourself, right? Statistically, everyone aims to be average.
Interesting.
So it talks about, if you make your 10X goal for your business, right? Evaluate what you're doing today to get there. So let's say my 10X goal is to help 1,000 businesses by 2028, let's say.
Okay.
Right? What am I doing today? What behaviors am I doing today to get there? And if that would have been my goal right now, I would tell you nothing I'm doing is getting me there. Right. So when I did that study on myself, I said, man, I'm wasting a lot of time in a lot of groups and a lot of breakfast and a lunch and a thing. And it's not helping me.
But that's so rewarding in and of itself.
Right.
That you came to that realization.
It was so liberating.
Right. Yes.
Because it's this pressure.
It's freeing.
It's freeing to realize. And it's a little bit painful too, because you realize, okay, well, if I would have asked myself this question, maybe I would be further along in my journey. But
if you could have kept going.
Right.
So that's what I mean about making mistakes or having realizations or epiphanies, that some people may not have those experiences, realizations, or read the book.
Right.
And how something, what I think is important in your example is that you picked up that book.
Right.
And that book resonated with you. And then you did a behavioral change based on what you learned. I think that's so rewarding in and of itself.
And I wasn't even like really a reader. I started reading a lot. I'm telling you, this journey has changed me. I tell my husband, I think my DNA has changed from owning a business.
No, I agree. Mine too.
It's like, it's like a diamond is made under pressure. It's just like, it's just constant. And I'm just, every 24 hours, it's another day to see what I'm made of.
It's so exhausting.
It is.
But it also feels so good.
It does feel good. And it's very, very rewarding. Very rewarding. Last question. This has been a great conversation. You are so easy to talk to.
Oh, I feel the same way about you.
What is the best piece of advice you've ever received? Life, not business life. What do you think that is that you could give us?
That life really is ups and downs, and you have to ride the moment when it's up and don't lower your guard. But when the downs come, be resilient enough to hold on till it comes back up again.
Yeah, there's ebbs and flows, right?
There's ebbs and flows. I love that. I love that you said that, because that's something that I tell my law partner a lot. When the computer decides to shut down, or at the missed opportune moment, something happens with technology or whatever it may be, that we become so dependent on it. I always say ebbs and flows, and I yell it across the office, ebbs and flows. So I actually love that you said that, because I'm a big fan of that statement. But, look, there's times that when I started my practice that I'm an only child, and my mom and dad are in their mid 80s. My dad just turned 87 on Sunday. And, I'm mommy and daddy's girl, even in my 40s. And, there were days where mom would ask how to go today. And I would say, I held on like if I was on top of a black stallion that had gone rogue. And I just held on as tight as I could. And you know what? I didn't fall off the horse. And so today was a good day. So that's kind of what I mean.
I love that too. That's so good. Just don't fall off the horse.
Just don't fall off.
Doesn't matter.
Just hold on for dear life. And when it comes to a stop, you feel accomplished just because you were not knocked off of it.
And also when it does come to the stop after that, like, recognize it. right? And recognize that you didn't fall off.
And not only that, but what did you do?
Right.
What specific moves? It's very easy to say, hold on, right? But
right.
it's you got to balance. You know, you have to have the mental strength, the emotional strength. You can't let your emotions get the best of you. So, you know, when you're through that experience and it comes to a stop and you realize you didn't fall, you say to yourself, well, what did I implement that assisted me to stay on? And then you use that to start the next day.
I think that's so powerful, because like you said, you know, you wake up, you go to bed, you wake up, you go to bed, you do it again. 12 years later, you're here. That sometimes you don't even realize it. Sometimes when you're at the top, you're just like, oh my God, I didn't realize it was so low.
That's why I think that we all need some quiet time. And I'm not talking about going to Pilates or doing yoga, even those are all wonderful things. Even if it's just, you know, I'm not talking about meditation. Everybody has their own form. But what I've learned to do is I take 5 or 10 minutes, maybe twice a day, and I force it. Whether I put it on my calendar or I put an alarm on my phone, and I just sit and just quiet time, just to process. Because a lot of times we're all on autopilot. And I think that we need the time to process, to be able to learn and move forward. And so to me, it's very, very important to take your time for yourself so that you can, because like you said, it goes by so fast. I mean, I'm 22 plus years practicing law. I'll turn 23 years practicing in November. That's crazy to me.
Right.
But it's important for me to take those moments to think back as to how I got here and everything that I've learned throughout the past 20 plus years. And I think that if you don't take the time to do that, you miss a lot of opportunities. So self-reflection, I think, is important.
And opportunities, and also just a moment to also be proud of yourself, right? And to be grateful that you haven't given, like that whole process of, there's a lot of sayings about, like, you know, everyone's worried about like the destination, but what about enjoying the journey? And the day-to-day, most of the times it's not, you don't enjoy it. But then when you look back, it's like, man, like it is enjoyable to build and to the hard stuff. It eventually becomes a point where you can enjoy all of it, right?
I think that that's a perfect example that you just said, because it is a journey, and I think it's about enjoying the journey. It's about the ride.
Right.
And, you know, I'm not a big fan of flying. You know, my best friend just came back from Europe, and, you know, she mapped out this trip, and God bless her. I would not have been able to do what she did. And it's these long flights and these layovers, and I wouldn't be able to do it. But she went to Europe, and she has such amazing memories. And when you think about it, you wouldn't have gotten to those memories and seen those amazing places if you did not participate in the experience of getting there. And I think that that's very true of life as well. And that's what you've just been saying. It's about the journey.
We're all on it. And I know I said that was my last question, but I have one more, and then I promise.
No, whatever you want. I'm here.
The mentorship. I wanted to touch on that because you started very early talking about that, and then I want to circle back to what you just said, but I don't want to forget because it's huge. I'm a huge believer in mentorship, and you said that you had several really good mentors.
I did.
What do you think? What did you learn about being mentored as a mentee? Like, what advice would you give to someone that is seeking a mentor? Because I think a lot of people are willing to pay for it, are willing to invest time, but then what? They fall off. How, if someone is looking for a 2-part question, looking for a mentor, what should they look for? And as a mentee, what advice would you give to be a good one?
So I think that when you're looking for a mentor, first of all, I don't know if you, at least in my experience, I don't know if you go out of your way to try to find a mentor. You might want to have a mentor. I think that it happens naturally or organically, where you find somebody in business, either that you work for or that you meet through a networking event, or just at the grocery store, quite frankly, and you know, you both go for the same vegetable. I don't know. The way that you meet people in day-to-day life is interesting. And you respect them, and you see what they do, and you see what they've built, you know, whether it be a business owner or a business owner and an attorney, which has been in my case. people that were doing it longer than me that I really respected and were successful and did it in an ethical and caring way, which unfortunately, like in every business, there's good and there's bad. And so that, to me, I had an opportunity to have 2 or 3 amazing mentors that I miss very much. But, you know, I respected them, and that's how they came into my life. And I asked a lot of questions, but I also listened and observed. So what I would tell a mentee is, when you're fortunate enough to find somebody who you admire and want to learn more about, focus more on observing and listening instead of talking, because I find ourselves a lot of times talking and, you know, being in about me, and you don't learn from the other person if you spend your time talking. So sit back, listen, observe, but most importantly, be grateful for that experience, because to me, I feel very fortunate that they took the time and work hard. You know, work hard, because these were, you know, these are very busy people running law firms of over 100, 150 attorneys for more than 20, 25 years. And when they take the time to bring you under their wing and mentor you, that's a gift. Yep. And so you have to work hard too to earn their respect and their desire to see potential in you, and then want to help get you to the potential that they believe that you could get to.
That's an amazing answer. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that sometimes people fall into this, I need a mentor thing. They're choosing the wrong one. They're choosing one that, like, for example, for me, I wanted to pick someone that has been where I've been, right? Like, that has the career path that aligns to something that I wanted to do. And in my space, also practices insurance in Florida, because Florida is a disaster when it comes to insurance, right? So he's in Tampa. He understands what I go through, right? Being in Florida with the marketplace. So, and I think you hit it on the head. It's, if they're going to invest their time on you, which we already covered, time is the most valuable asset anybody has. You better be grateful, and you better, you know, there's nothing worse than someone that seeks help from someone constantly and then still just disregards all the advice they give you.
And that really is such a waste.
Such a waste. And they'll drop you. There's people that have reached that level of success want to pay it forward. That's what I've realized too. They do want to pay it forward, but they're not going to waste their time with people that also think they know better. They want to help the hungry. They want to help the people that will take the help.
I think that we all need to know what we don't know. Right. And I think that if you can't take a look at a circumstance and say, and be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know. Maybe you can look it up. Maybe you can ask somebody. Maybe you can learn it. But in life, if you think you know it all, you don't. Because there's no way. Right. And so if you think you know it all and you don't follow the advice of a mentor, then what's the purpose? They're not going to invest that valuable time of theirs. And I assure you that they'll find somebody else with potential that wants that advice, and that'll absorb it like a sponge. And boy, did I absorb things like a sponge. Yep.
I'm like that too.
That's amazing for me.
I value people's time too. Yes. Yeah. So I was like that too. This was amazing.
I loved it.
Thank you so much for coming.
Top 5 experiences of this year, 2024.
This was amazing. This is going to be such an impactful, real episode. It's always refreshing to talk to people that are willing to talk about this and be honest about successes and failures, and not failures, but just hiccups in the road, and all of these things that, you know, some people just don't want to address and make it seem like it's so easy. So thank you so much. Definitely going to have you back, because I want to continue talking to you about like networking and the power of community and
we're
all
so
of that
alike.
Stuff. Yes.
We're so alike. Great. And I love absorbing your energy and your knowledge.
Same. So we're going to continue over cocktails for sure.
I love it. And I'll be happy to come back anytime you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Ferrer Law Group. You can find me on my website, which is ferrerlawgroup.com, FerrerLawGroup.com. And I'm in Weston. in Weston, Florida, but we serve the entire state. Thank God for modern technology.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll put all that information in the show notes. Again, thank you so much.